I'm Elizabeth Moore, and our guest today is Joshua Braff, author of the Diaries. Joshua's third novel tells the story of Jay, a copywriter who's lost his job due to the recession. Jay's wife, Jackie, is CEO of a company that's lost its backing. Husband and wife make the calculated decision for Jay to become a stay-at-home dad to their two children, Alex and Tara, while Jackie takes on the role of sole provider when she accepts a dream job in St. Petersburg, Florida. I am super excited to welcome Joshua. Good morning, Joshua.
Good morning.
I've been collecting intriguing first paragraphs for years. I have to say you had me at hello with yours. Would you read it for us today?
The opening paragraph of the Diaries, certainly.
Yes.
San Francisco on the mind. So many years in the pattern of forever, but we break the pact, say goodbye to close friends, and journey off to the flatlands of Tampa Bay, where alligators wade in swimming pools and squirrels stay in trees until the ground stops moving. They call our new home Lightning Alley. My daughter is currently counting the seconds between the flash and roar. That one was 10, she says, having never seen lightning in all her 9 years. Earthquakes, yes. Random bolts of massive electricity, no. I sit up in bed and see one out the window. There is no beginning or warning. It just appears, its shape, an abstract bolt very near the ground. They say keep off the phone, the computer. 26 deaths between 1990 and 2003. My daughter Tara stands at the window counting the seconds. 3, 4, 5, 6, and we hear the thunder. She looks at me as if the word is no longer a predictable place. Oh no, she says.
I love that first paragraph.
Oh, thanks. Thanks so much. I have not ever read it out loud, other than when it was on my computer.
Jay's tenderness and concern for his son and daughter reminded me of the unforgettable character Garp from John Irving's The World According to Garp. Another male protagonist who stayed home to raise his children while writing on the side. It's not imagined in your case, though. You really are the primary caretaker of your children, aren't you?
Yes. Since 2000, when my son, who will turn 15 on Thursday, when he was born, my wife and I had come together to say, how are we going to make ends meet the best way for us? And it seems to be a decision that many, many more people are making these days. You can see it through the commercials in the pop culture where dad's in the Baby Bjorn and a Tide ad during the Super Bowl. When back in 2000, I felt like I was the only guy to ever think of it. She decided to take a job in St. Petersburg, Florida, and the four of us upped and moved from progressive northern Cal to the deep south. Kids were kind of baffled, and where am I? And they went off to school, and my wife went off to work, and I decided to write about my observations of being a dad all those years.
I found this little bit of information. U.S. women are far more likely to be primary breadwinners in 2015. According to the National At-Home Dad Network, there are 14 million stay-at-home dads, a number that has doubled in the last 10 years. Do you find that there's still a stigma attached to these fathers?
Not where I live, and I don't know that that's true all over. I was just on the East Coast dropping my son off at camp, and someone said, you know what, you've got to start telling people that it's hard for men. Men realize that it's hard. It's like manual labor. You see how hard it is to raise kids and to be in the trenches. It can be handled badly, and it can be handled really well, so I wanted to be on top of it. In my head, I was kind of like, well, where I live, that's happening. It's a little bit like, I'm near Berkeley, Oakland. There seems to be an energy in finding where we're headed. There's an opening to where we might be headed as far as our roles. And the numbers that you just said suggest that something is changing. So that's all in the conversation is when this dad sits with his wife and says, let's think about how we're going to make ends meet work best. That's the wife saying, look what I could do. Now she has to also say, I'm going to be okay not being in the house in the day in, day out.
Yeah, which is kind of hard, yeah.
You can see the conversations are specific, but wow, the numbers have jumped, and the Diaries finds itself in a time where everybody's sort of talking about it, and as I mentioned, the pop culture reflects it.
Jay's 13-year-old son Alex has a hard time dealing with life in Florida and becomes depressed. Jay and Jackie handle his dejection quite differently. Did you find it difficult to write the scenes where Jay loses his temper with his son?
I based that character off of a boy, my son, when he was 11, and he was thrown into that new world, into a world where there weren't a lot of artsy kids in the school. It was really geared around sports, and those that were going to be best at sports were going to thrive. He ended up finding a really comfortable social clique, but it took him some time. And in that time where he was sort of lost and lonely, I drew from it, and then I put it into a 13-year-old boy. Those were difficult things to write, yeah, and they're probably difficult things to read. And I think it's important to play with the boundaries of good and bad and painful and not in when you're writing about child rearing. And this father wants things to go well, but of course there's curveballs and pitfalls all over the place when you're dealing with humans.
The strain put on Jay and Jackie's marriage felt very real. I was struck by how his strong feelings for her carried him through. Have you gotten any feedback about how refreshing it is to read a book where the husband and wife care about each other so much?
No, and it feels really good to hear. I agree with you that there was a lot of work put into that, draft after draft. I adjusted. I remember in earlier drafts thinking it's not clicking because she's traveling so much and he's home, and I need the reader to see the truth of this love.
The delicate blend of angst and humor in your smart prose kept me turning the page. Do you find yourself laughing and crying along with your characters' ups and downs while you're writing?
Writing about my son, I'm protected in a sense. You'd think it would be really painful. I'm protected in a sense because I'm at the helm. And I would hate to read it, but it's okay to write it. Mm-hmm. Sort of. There's a little bit of that. It's important for me to be raw and to be vulnerable to get the best prose. And it's a juggling of pathos, humor, and pace, and then the dimension of the characters is crucial.
Your brother Zach Braff is an actor who also wrote and directed Garden State, and is currently directing a film he co-wrote with your brother Adam. Your sister Shoshana is a fashion designer. Besides writing, you also paint and take photographs. What was in the water in that Braff household out there in New Jersey anyway? Where do you think this fountain of creativity sprang from?
We did not come from professional artists. Dad was a lawyer and Mom was a student of psychology, and then while raising us became a psychologist. So, but there was, I would say, from my dad's point of view, we were 20 minutes from Manhattan, and he loved theater. He loved going to see a chorus line, and let's go see Fiddler on the Roof. And so the drive through the tunnel that wasn't that long, and then the smells of that and the excitement of that definitely bit into Zach Braff. And then on the other side of things, my mother is not only, she's very open with as being a kid, I remember wanting to write. Maybe it was a poem, and I said, I want to write this, and then I kind of looked at it, and I remember I thought I might sing it, and so it was there was something there from the get-go.
There are many similarities between aspects of your life and the lives of the protagonists in all three of your novels. Have there been any unforeseen consequences because you've chosen to blur the lines between reality and fiction?
Not a lot. Not a lot of consequence, and I'm happy to say. I had some with my dad from The Unthinkable Thoughts of Jacob Green, because he was positive the world would think he was the character that I worked so hard to build. And so I was faced with long conversations about, it was kind of like, what are you trying to say to me? I found myself dealing with that, and then with this one, people were saying, oh, you have a son, I could see it coming early. And it was a lot easier since my son is really, he's grown and things like that.
You were with one of the most prestigious New York publishers for both your first and second books. But for the Daddy Diaries, you self-published with Prince Street Press, a company your wife, Jo Braff, created. What instigated the change, and why did she decide to start her own press?
The Unthinkable Thoughts of Jacob Green came out There was no promise of anything, but I had a yes from a couple of publishers. One was Simon & Schuster and one was Algonquin. I went with a small, reputable house with the great people who were going to put me on the small list. Come fall, I was going to be one of 5 novels. That made a ton of sense. In 2010, the tides of the publishing industry began to change. So my wife, 20 years in the digital publishing industry, meaning if you're going to what they call, self-publish, we call direct to consumer. We formed a team that has the same players in it that you would at the big 5, Simon Schuster, Random House. So I take the royalty advance that I got for Peep Show, put it into this company, and hired an editor, a copy editor, a layout person, cover design, and publicists. Wrote the best book I could, and my wife gets into how we might market my name as a brand over the internet, social media. Facebook and Twitter have to boom. You're going to write a whole bunch of essays for free that are about being a dad and get them on the right sites. Here we go. You're going to get on HuffPost Live with Zach Braff, and you're going to do it, and he's a household name, and then you're going to go do The Strand, a great independent bookstore in New York, with Zach, and they're going to shoot that and put it on YouTube. Now we're going to tweet about it. So it's a full-time job, but it's our own house. The balance of this is my job and how might I take more control of it since this is my job.
You've written 3 books in 11 years. The highly praised The Unthinkable Thoughts of Jacob Green was followed by Peep Show. And now you're promoting the Daddy Diaries. What's in the works for the future?
Prince Street Press, first of all, just got the rights to The Unthinkable Thoughts of Jacob Green. So I'm going to go in the studio and do audio. The next book is my collection. There's after 3 novels, there's that collection, and I published some really good short stories in national literary journals back in the 90s. And I'm going to bring those out, and then I'm going to write new ones. It'll probably be under 10 short stories, and it'll be a really cheap price. It's going to be like $5.
Well, thanks a lot, Josh.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
You have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Joshua Braff, his new novel, The Daddy Diaries. Thanks so much for visiting From One Bird to Another.